Honourable Dr Duncan Webb.
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I do want to start by congratulating Camilla Bellich for bringing this here today, and also, of course, my friend and colleague Ibrahim Omer, who's here in the House tonight, who brought this bill to the House in the first instance. They've done a great job, not only of drafting an important bill, but also of doing that other thing in politics, which is marshalling support around the House. And it does demonstrate that Parliament can do a fantastic job, particularly around members' bills, where our job is to genuinely persuade our colleagues from every party and marshal support. So well done. I don't often tell personal stories in this House, but I want to start with one. And it's the story of Charmaine. Charmaine, whose name is already public, worked with me at a law firm, and she was the human resources manager. And she was very good at her job, but she wasn't honest. And what she did, she was clever. What she did was, when it was someone's time to leave, she would add some extra holiday pay. And over the course of several years, whenever someone left, she'd get an extra week of their holiday pay. It's called fraud. It's theft. And she stole, over the course of several years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. She went to jail. She was sentenced to more than 3 years in prison. And that was right, because she was dishonest and she stole from her employer. I was a partner at that law firm. There was a bit of a joke that because of her theft, some of the partners couldn't upgrade their Porsches. I want to tell you another story. It's fictitious. It's a story about an employer who, when people leave, shortchange them their holiday pay, who don't give them their holiday pay, and if they don't ask, they don't follow it up. And over the course of many years, they steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from their employees. Their employees don't miss out on a Porsche, they miss out on their mortgage payments. And you know what? The National Party would want the world to stay that way. That is ridiculous. Charmaine stole money just as much as an employer who shortchanges someone on their holiday pay steals money. And I find it unbelievable that the National Party, and I cannot believe that Carl Bates called not stealing a compliance cost. I cannot believe that he said that that was a red tape burden we shouldn't put on employers. Charmaine went to jail for a reason. Katie Nimmin, who at least had the decency to not sound like she believed what she was saying, Katie Nimmin would say Charmaine should deal with that in the employment court. It's a civil matter. Now, we know that when people are dishonest, when they steal money, when, in the words of this Act, they intentionally and without reasonable excuse take money, the criminal law should kick in. And look, the ACT Party I forgive because they're irredeemable, but the National Party, really? The National Party, who puts themselves out as a thoughtful party who wants to get the law right? Why? Really, why? So, you know, the fact of the matter is that this went to Select Committee and 84% of the submitters there were totally in favour of this reform. All we're asking for is an even playing field. That where an employee steals, they suffer the consequences. When an employer steals, they suffer the consequences. And just because the employer happens to have the money that the employee is entitled to in their bank account doesn't change things. Now, I want to be really clear. There's been scaremongering, and I want to be really, really clear. If the employer, doesn't have the money in the bank, has tried their best, and is not intentionally depriving someone of their wages, it's not theft. It's a liquidation, and the civil law deals with that. All the reckless trading provisions deal with that, as it should. But no one's going to go to jail for not having the money to pay their staff because the sales weren't enough that week. It's really important to remember that. But the fact of the matter is that a party that we look to for responsible government. Oh, that's good, yeah. Yeah, we do. No. You say we do. We look to you because you are in government, and we expect you to make reasonable decisions about things like this. I do want to recognise the work of New Zealand First on this, because they have come to the table and they've brought a thoughtful and considered approach and an open mind. It's all we ask. And thank you for your support for this bill, because I think it reflects on the fact that we will not agree on everything. We didn't when we were in government together, and we won't if ever that happens again. But on this we agree and we can come together, so thank you for that. Because this bill is actually an unbelievably simple bill. If you steal, pay the consequences. And stealing is the same whether you're an employee stealing from an employer or an employer stealing from an employee. That's why this bill will pass tonight.
Vanessa Wiening.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is a pleasure to rise to speak on this bill, because I think this is an opportunity for the National Party to explain our sensible opposition to this bill. None of us want to see migrant workers or any workers exploited in any way, and I want to just acknowledge Ibrahim Umar for his bringing of this bill and likely to become law to the House, and can understand the reasons behind it and what you want to accomplish, and nobody disputes that. Nobody wants to see the bad actors, the people who are using their positions of power where they have more understanding of how to take advantage of people. Nobody wants to see that, and that's not right, and we do not in any way condone that. I think when we talk about legislation, and from our position, we look at what is the problem that we are trying to solve. And from hearing the story that you brought, the problem was that there was an imbalance of power and not understanding what the rights were, what the correct thing was to do. Now, criminal activity doesn't get, it's never really, when you make something a criminal offence, does it really deter people? That's the real question. This is creating a new pathway into criminal law when there is already a pathway for resolution in the civil through the civil courts. So the ability for employers already exists to use the Employment Relations Act, the Minimum Wage Act, Wages Protections Act, all have provisions that prevent unlawful deductions from wages, as do the Holidays Act. So when we think about what is it that we're trying to do here, putting it in under a new system or a different way of approaching this is not going to make it any quicker. So this is not going to increase people's access to justice. It may increase people's access to legal aid, and maybe that's the real reason that we're looking at it through this avenue, because if you were to bring a matter through the civil court, my understanding is that you don't have the same access to legal aid. So again, this is another problem. This is the problem. People can't afford to take the actions, and therefore they're not getting access to justice. That's a real problem, and we do need to look at that. And then, so by creating a pathway through the criminal system, we will actually likely slow down people's access to justice, because it takes a lot longer for these things to go through a criminal proceeding. Some of my colleagues have also spoken about the impact of the police needing to be involved in these proceedings as well. So we can imagine a situation, and yes, there's always hypotheticals to discuss, but look, we could have a situation where, as an employee is leaving an employment relationship for whatever reason, they can raise an allegation through this. And the fact of having to raise this allegation means it's then investigated, it goes through the police process. They come and knock on an employer's door. The employer has to defend themselves, and it adds more cost because they have to then employ a lawyer. So look at that as the lawyers. The lawyers are the ones who win in this. It's always the lawyers, isn't it? The ones who win here are always the lawyers. They're always the ones who win here. Now, I've got the privilege now of sitting on the Education and Workforce Select Committee, Madam Speaker, and I'm very, very glad, sad to see that Camilla Balich is no longer on it, because I felt we would have had some good cross the seats discussions. However, now coming to speak on this bill, I can see that through the process, as the Chair, Katie Nimmin, pointed out so ably, is very well discussed and traversed all through the Select Committee. And I thought it was very interesting that some of the concerns that were raised through the submissions haven't been fully addressed. I thought it was interesting to read that the Council of Trade Unions pointed out that it would be hard, that mens rea would be hard to establish for non-natural persons. So do we actually have a resolution for that? I'm not sure. Also, Business New Zealand noted that in the high threshold of beyond reasonable doubt through the criminal system is imposed compared to the balance of probabilities that lies in the Standards Employment Court. So, and then how does this then makes the proving of intention becomes quite is quite difficult. It's hard for the prosecutors have a greater burden of proof to say that this was an intention. And when it comes to, we know that proving intentionality can be very, very difficult. They've still got to prove that that's the case. And then if they're able to do that, is this a pattern or is this a one-off thing, is going to be, you know, an interesting part of the question. Madam Speaker, if you'll allow me to indulge for one very quick moment, Madam Chair pointed out the committee pointed out to me that she omitted to make a very important acknowledgement during her speech, and I've undertaken to fix that error for her. So she should have he's no longer here, but anyway, she needed to acknowledge her husband Jeremy and his birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday, Jeremy, for tomorrow. Thank you for your indulgence, Madam Speaker. So look, this, as I said, if we want... Only 3 more minutes, says Duncan. Yeah, thank you. Do you have any more contributions to make to my speech? Look, when we are looking at this this bill, the intentions behind it and the good intentions behind it, we absolutely acknowledge. There will be unintended consequences that come from this. My colleague Carl Bates pointed out that employers are a very valuable part of this relationship. It is a trusting, a situation, a relationship of trust should be in existence between employers and employees. This is a matter that's likely to affect very few people within an employment relationship, because it is a very small number of people that are at that extreme bad end. So it will be, and the member opposite says that we don't know that, and it's already been pointed out that neither do they. because there is no good data on that, and maybe that is because there hasn't been the ability for people to bring this before the law. So it will be very interesting to see what happens. However, it will slow everything that happens that is added through this process will slow down the justice system. And if every matter if every problem that needed to have a really careful, nuanced approach to it was given a legislative, a new legislative agreement, a way of going through it, it really is just going to clog things up. It's not solving the problems, the underlying problem being a mismatch of information, a mismatch of power that is abused. That's not going to be resolved by this change in the law, changing of avenues of recompense, and it's not going to solve the fact that the fact that we have issues with access to justice because of cost in this country. That is a different matter, is a different problem. It is something that should be seriously considered, but taking this course of action to solve that problem that will result in other consequences may not be the effect that we wanted to achieve. So what we want to do is to eliminate migrant exploitation. We absolutely want to do that, but I do not commend the bill to the House for that reason.
Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Madam Chair, this bill amends the Crimes Act to clarify that intentionally not paying an employee their wages is theft. The law as it stands does not address this. It's currently carried out in the civil jurisdiction. This bill corrects that and makes it a matter for law enforcement through the police. This bill supports Labour's continued effort to protect workers' rights and ensure they get a fair deal by strengthening the laws around labour law. I've heard the most sorrowful speeches I've ever done in this House tonight. I've heard theft from an employee being equivalent to a layer of bureaucracy. We've also heard that not stealing is too much compliance. We don't want to do that. And also that making a criminal offence doesn't deter people. Well, that's a new one from National. I thought it did, according to you. And so I'm quite astounded, Madam Chair, from what we've heard tonight, and I look forward to reviewing some of those speeches later on and having a good laugh. But it's not a laughing matter, because wage theft is a real and constant problem in New Zealand. This is a wider issue that for many New Zealanders, they still have few rights at work. Many workers never even see a written employment contract, even though there is a legal requirement for them to do so. I would like to acknowledge Ibrahim Omar and his work in bringing the bill so far. He has worked incredibly hard and he has real experiences of this happening in New Zealand. I'd also like to acknowledge my colleague Camilla Bellich for continuing the good work and progressing this bill in order for it to pass into law. And I'd like to acknowledge all those union workers and activists who continue to fight for workers' rights in a time that has been incredibly difficult. I know that we've still got a lot of work to do in this space. For many New Zealand workers, the era of the Employment Contracts Act in 1991 has never gone from the workplace. There is still an inherent inequality of bargaining power that is very much alive. And so this bill makes an important step at rectifying this imbalance. Fair pay agreements also did this, but that's already been stripped away by this government. So what we need to do by having this bill in place is that it actually makes it better for those people experiencing wage theft. Tonight in the break I heard a story that was of wage theft, where someone who was working in New Zealand was due $3.50 extra an hour. And that had accrued over a period of months. It came to thousands of dollars. They pursued it through their union delegate. They wrote letters. They inquired as to how they would get that money paid back, and there was no engagement from the employer. What happened was the delegate forwarded the link to this bill to the employer and said, "This will be made law in New Zealand and you will be breaking the law." within a short period of time, the full amount of unpaid wages was paid. So in situations, funnily enough, where there's predetermination, white-collar crime, actually having a crime is a good deterrent, because if it's clear what the penalty is, in some areas like this, it does deter employers from taking money from employees unnecessarily. I'll try and keep my call short, Madam Speaker, but I'd like to say that for those migrant workers in New Zealand, this adds to the protections in place. For those employees that have to fight for their rights, there is now something in place equivalent to Australia, equivalent to other jurisdictions. The penalties aren't as tough here, but I really hope they go towards building a body of law that protects workers to earn a fair wage, to have enough money in their pockets to hold their head up, to put food on their table, and to be proud of being a Kiwi. And it's a damn shame that side opposite don't agree with that.
Dean Bidwell.
Madam Speaker, it's a pleasure to rise in the third reading of the Crimes Theft of Employment Amendment Bill. I wasn't going to take a call, but sitting here I felt compelled to get up and share my views on what is, I think, an important debate. And I would like to start by acknowledging Ibrahim Omar for your contribution, and Camilla Bellich, Northcote local, for taking this member's bill on. But Madam Speaker, where I start from is similar to where a lot of people on this side of the House start from, which is that we believe in individual employment relationships. It's no secret. It is an ideological debate that the left and the right have had for decades, and we will continue to have. But from my perspective, Madam Speaker, we believe in employment relationships that it should be employer and employee-led. Individual. The government shouldn't have a role to play. It should just set the parameters and let those relationships get on. And I'm of the view, having lived around the world, I've lived in different contexts. I've lived in France, which has a very heavy-handed approach to employment relationships. Look at where they're at the moment. I've also lived in America, which has a complete opposite approach to, and look at where they're at the moment. So actually, there is no right or wrong way. It's what fits for New Zealand's context. And I think, Madam Speaker, where we've got to is, where we're getting to is getting back to that individual employment relationship. So I think that this bill is heavy-handed. There are already a lot of ways in which employees can go about exercising their rights under the Employment Relations Act, the Minimum Wage Act, and the Holidays Act. But, you know, zooming out, there are a lot of laws in this country that aren't policed. And, you look at the litter laws in New Zealand. We don't have, and I've got police in my own family. I don't want police going around making sure that people are fined for, littering, because there are laws in place for that. There are bylaws in place as well, Madam Speaker. But we've got more serious crimes that we want the police to focus on. In Northcote, in the members' own electorate, there have been some serious crimes committed. Robbery, armed robbery, stabbings, murders. Those are in this great electorate of Northcote. Come over and see Willie. They don't take crime seriously. But, Madam Speaker, I want to commend the hard-working police of the Waitemata district who have gone out to bat for those types of crime, who have found the offenders and who are bringing them to justice. That's the crime that we want to focus on, because that's the crime that's actually going to make our community safer on this side of the House. So, look, Madam Speaker, I've heard some good debates in this House today about, from both sides, around why this bill should or should not go forward. But again, Madam Speaker, I want to bring it back to today, the core crux of this, which is we don't think that this is needed. We don't think this is needed. We think that there's unintended consequences. We want the police focused on improving the community safety of our community. And we want an employment relationship that works at the individual level. We want government out of our lives. Northcote voters, except that person over there, wants government out of our lives. They're Camilla, and she lives in the most wealthy...
2 names, first name, last name.
Camilla Bellich, you know, people in her neighbourhood. I've door knocked every door in her street, and I know the sentiment of her community, Madam Speaker, that they would not approve of such a bill because they believe in employment relationships at the individual level. They believe in the current architecture and that it's sufficient, and they want our police focused on what matters to them. So, Madam Speaker, I do not commend this bill to the House tonight.
Honourable Phil Twyford.
Madam Speaker, I'm trying to imagine the National Party caucus meeting when they discussed this bill. And Katie Nimmin puts her hand up and says, we've got this bill, Camilla Bellich's got this members' bill, and it will make it a criminal offence if people intentionally steal money from other people. And I'm trying to imagine what the discussion was in the National Party caucus that led them to think it was a good idea to oppose this at the third reading. I actually think tonight's debate could be really, really useful for teaching young people civics. Because, you know, as an MP, from time to time, some young person will say to you, what does the National Party stand for? What, you know, the blue team, what happens if you tick the blue colour? Well, tonight is actually a really revealing demonstration of what the National Party stands for. The self-styled party of law and order is voting against a bill that will criminalise the intentional theft of money by employers from their employees. That's what's going on in the chamber tonight. And we've seen just unbelievable things that we've heard from that side of the House. Not from the New Zealand First colleagues, I would say, but Katie Nimmin thought that this offence would clog up the courts. It was a layer of bureaucracy and red tape. Carl Bates, God bless him, worried that this would be bad for the mental health of business owners because the HR consultant would come running in and saying, you could go to jail if you steal money. It's just absolutely unbelievable. And what it does illustrate, and what it will teach generations of civics students, is that the core value of the National Party is to protect the economic interests of employers at the expense of everybody else who works for a living. That is the core value of the National Party. And it shouldn't really surprise us that they want to defend the interests of employers in the face of logic, of morals, of principle and reason, that they will reflexively support the right of employers to steal money and not be held accountable for it, because they oppose every single increase to the minimum wage. Every single one, for as many years as I can remember. They trashed fair pay agreements as one of the first things they did when they were elected, because they didn't want low-paid workers to earn a decent living. They restored unfair trial periods, and they're also in the House at the moment bringing in a bill that will allow employers to deduct money from a worker's wages if they so much as wear a badge or a T-shirt during industrial action. That's the kind of party that the National Party is. That is their core values. And tonight's debate reveals this incredible double standard, that they will stand up for employers, defend their economic interests, do everything they can to drive down the cost of labour at the expense of working New Zealanders, but they will not support a bill that criminalises the intentional theft of money. Absolutely unbelievable. And I want to thank and give credit to Ibrahim Omier and Camilla Bellich for bringing this bill to the House and showing generations of civic students what kind of party the National Party is.
Great speaker. Grant McCullum.
Madam Speaker, well, I'm right. I feel like I'm the last speaker on this bill, and you know, sometimes you're that person, you're the last speaker at a function before everyone goes to have a beer. Well, that's kind of where we're at the moment. But I'd like to start with this. The previous speaker, the Honourable Phil Twyford, he was, focused on what it would be like in the National Caucus. Well, I've got a question. I wonder what it was like in the Labour Caucus. When they were in power, let's go back, and this concept of putting a bill forward which actually says this bill came up for discussion. Did they think it was so important then that they would actually put it on their own order paper and pass it? Oh, hold on. What happened? Nothing. Crickets. No noise. So I just wonder, I find it a little bit hypocritical that suddenly they're all in behind this bill when they had the opportunity in 6 long years of destroying the New Zealand economy, they didn't have enough time and priority to actually put this on the order paper. And that was what was missing. So I take these crocodile tears with a rather large grain of salt. You know, I'll just put that right out there right now. But then, yeah, good salt, very good salt from the Blenheim. It's great, they make great salt there. Very good. Good to hear from you. Welcome to the House. Great to have you here. Look, now God, I'm getting a lot of commentary here. Everyone's very excited about this bill. But now, look, I think, now I think it's important actually. I would like to acknowledge that getting a members' bill drawn is quite an achievement. I think we have to acknowledge that. And I would like to acknowledge the original mover of the bill, Ibrahim Omier. Congratulations. And also then to Camilla Bellich, who has followed this bill through to this point, where you've obviously managed to convince one of our coalition partners to support the bill, and well done to you. But I'd also like to just acknowledge the other members of the great select committee that we all sat on, although it's all been blown up recently because we've got new members coming and going. I've lost count of who, I'm not quite sure who's on it anymore actually. So I'd just like to acknowledge our great chair, Katie Nimmin, who's did a great job, and her husband wasn't here at the House earlier tonight, Jeremy, good to have him here. I'll acknowledge the Deputy Chair, Carl Bates, who did a great job. Also Mike Butterick, who was part of that committee for a while, great to have you here. And then there's Parmjit Pamar. But then we go to the other side of the House. We're going, look, thank you for the advice. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And then there's all the other members from the other side of the House. The Honourable Phil Twyford, Camilla herself, Jan Tinetti, and Ricardo, who was here earlier, Ricardo Menzies March. So it's fantastic. Look, I think it's important. The thing that concerns me most is this, that being an employer, when you are an employer, you're taking a big risk. You're the person or a group of people that actually starts a business, takes a risk, and creates the opportunity for people to work, for employees to work for you. And good employers do a great job, and so do good employees. And I have to acknowledge that up front. We all want to make sure that people absolutely get paid for the work they do. But when that doesn't happen, for whatever reason, then there is already a process that takes care of that. There's a civil process that can actually take care of that, right? Through the Employment Relations Act currently, and the Minimum Wage Act and the Wages Protection Act. They all provide that opportunity, right? But then but think about it as an employer when you're doing your best, and suddenly out of nowhere, something happens, the next minute you get a knock on the door and the police are turning up and you are being questioned about actually have you about whether you've done your payroll properly or not. And that is a big stress and worry as an employer. But running a business is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing. And I think it's really important people remember that and acknowledge that. Right? I think it's very, very important to keep that in mind. And I'm thinking, and as someone, when you think about the employers who get out there and create businesses and do things and create economic wealth in our country and take those risks, I'm thinking about all those great employers who, in the not too distant future, are going to come up to the great area of Northland, and they're going to build a big highway called the Northern Expressway. They're going to build this expressway. And there are going to be lots of different employers and subcontractors who employ people. And the stress, this is really important. We need to actually open up the economy of Northland. And so that these are the people that are going to drive the bulldozer. They're going to be the employers who own the bulldozers and the graders that do the work. And they've got this, and this is a tough enough job as it is, without actually having to worry about have a police knock on the door and call out for a criminal offence. I think that is really, really concerning. These are the people that are going to build the roads. These are the people that are going to drill the tunnels that are going to take us through the Dome Valley, all the way up to the Great Electorate of Northland. And so I just think it's really important we remember all that. I'm getting great advice. The thing is here, I think it's really important. But the irony of the Honourable Phil Twyford making a lot of noise at the moment is that he was the one that cancelled our road that the employers could not work on. I haven't forgotten that, the Honourable Phil Twyford. The employers never had the chance, so therefore you took that away from us. And you took that away from all the businesses in the north, right? You missed that opportunity. You see, so I really think it absolutely. So the roads of national significance are back. The employers of national significance are back, which is great news. Right, great news. But I would like to acknowledge actually this bill was improved a bit with New Zealand First's contribution. At least really put a focus in on the word intent. That is the one good thing that did come out of this whole process, and I have to acknowledge that from there. But the thing is, there's been lots of bills and so forth passed, rules created with good intent. And I'm thinking, but the stress that they come and people, and then the lawyers get involved and the legal system gets involved. And suddenly you look at, for example, good people who are good farmers, for example, suddenly find themselves at the mercy of law, which, for example, around farming practices. And it comes back to haunt them. Well, this could be the same here. The extra stress that puts on a business owner is something else. So anyway, so I think that probably just about covers it all off, because actually we're about to get to the point where I will have to sit down, and then we've only got a couple of minutes to go, and I'm sure they're all disappointed on the other side of the house, all very disappointed. Even the audience in the really is disappointed. Oh, there's the bell. We've got 2 minutes to go. But look, in all seriousness, congratulations, Camilla Bellich. The opportunity to actually get a bill through the House and is a really good... No, I'm not going to cross the floor. That's not a very good suggestion. But thank you. But look, I really commend you for bringing this to the House. National has made its case as to why it does not support this bill, and we do not commend the bill to the House. Thank you.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it.
Party vote.
A party vote has been called for. Clerk, please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa New Zealand.
Te kaimā rima pōti whakai.
ACT New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Chair, New Zealand First.
The ayes are 63, the noes are 60. The question is agreed.
Crimes Theft by Employer Amendment Bill, third reading.